Well, this is Tex Henson, ladies and gentlemen. He started off working for Disney in the 40s, and he was on the design team that came up with Chip and Dale for Disney. And he worked for Famous Studios, which produced the Casper cartoons in the 50s.
Popeye.
Popeye. What else did they do? Casper, Popeye,
And then Baby Huey.
Baby Huey,
Yeah.
little Lulu, little Audrey.
Little Audrey.
And then in the 60s, he went to Mexico to supervise the animation department down there and
On the Bullwinkle show.
on the Bullwinkle show. And then they liked his work so much they called him back to start his own studio, and he produced the
Tricks Rabbit commercials.
Tricks the Rabbit. He did some other stuff. What was it? Tricks the Rabbit?
Well, we opened up the Mexican market. We were doing stuff for American Airlines, and Al Fulmer's Mohawk, which is Mohawk Rugs, and Colgate, which is Colgate. We opened up the whole. We opened up the commercial market in Mexico. But I'm also have the title of being a film pioneer in the Third Coast. I'm the one that came back here and helped establish the motion picture industry here in Texas. And I have the status of being a film pioneer. I get to go to the meetings, and all the old mossbacks sit around, and talk about the old days.
Well, Tex also was one of the early pioneers of commercial animation for television.
I was the one who made the transition in New York from entertainment cartoons to television cartoons.
Did you have was that a hard procedure to get there to convince the clientele to try that new?
Yeah, fairly. A lot of them didn't feel that they didn't know whether they wanted to do that or not, or whether they would do anything for them. What we ran into was when television was suddenly upon us, the advertising agencies were trying to figure out, so they were called flat-footed, and they were trying to figure out, what's the closest thing they could find to set up an apartment. And they should have gone to their space ad people, because the space ad people are used to thinking visually, but they went to the radio people because they figured that's the closest thing to television, and those people were completely lost. Now, you can, in 1 minute, you can tell your whole inventory of a store, but you try to put that in pictures, and you just got a montage that nobody can see anything. And they couldn't understand why it didn't work. Or they couldn't understand why they couldn't have a minute and a half of sound for a 1 minute commercial. And you tell them, well, you can't do that. And they said, well, they go find somebody who could. And about after the sixth person down, they found out they got the same answer. Then they would go ahead and produce it with them, but they wouldn't come back to you. You better hope you were the sixth in line, so you got the job.
What's really interesting, and a lot of people don't know this, and only Tex would know because he was there, but the Bullwinkle cartoons were all done painted with house paint, latex paint. It's not the kind of paint that you normally use for cell animation. And it's really funny because since he pointed that out to me, that new series from the Disney people are putting out, it's like 6 tapes of the Bullwinkle show. If you look at it, you can really see it.
See, what happened was, set up down in Mexico, of course, they didn't have any cell vinyl down there, cartoon color. And when they were setting it up, there was a painter down there named Frank Hirsch, who was, he's married to a Mexican girl, and he was living in Mexico, and I guess Frank was having to go on the cheap, so he was experimenting with paints other than oils or whatever, and he discovered latex house paint. So Frank was hired to head the background department at this new studio they were setting up, and of course he brought along this thing and they was painting the background with house paint, and so they were painting the cells with some kind of paint that wasn't staying on too well, so they decided to try this house paint, and that's what they ended up painting the cells with was house paint. Now, we set up this second studio, which is Anamaso International, which was to do commercials for the States and for Mexico, and open up the Mexican market. Well, you see, they didn't care about the client didn't care about the shows, but their commercials are their little polished jewels. So they'd spend the money for that. So when we set up the division where we're doing the Strix Rabbit commercials, all that stuff was done with pictograph pens, and we sent to the States. We'd drive up the States, and one of us would get in the car and go across the border and pick up some cartons of cell vinyl to bring back, and that's what we sold. The Strix Rabbit stuff was painted normal, but not the Bullwinkle show, or Underdog, or any of that other jazz.
I think what might be interesting is if you guys have any questions, you know, about anything that really relates to animation. He knows just about everybody in the business. He can tell you stories that you probably never heard before.
I wouldn't care to hear all of them.
You might not want to repeat
Well,
some.
could you tell us what maybe Fritz Freeling was like?
Huh?
Fritz Freeling, what he was like?
I don't know, Frizz.
Fritz.
Well, he doesn't know everybody.
I knew.
Well, Mark.
I mean, I had met Frizz Freeling, but I didn't know him. I mean, I knew Chuck Jones better than I did Frizz. You know, I did know Chuck pretty well, but Frizz just didn't happen to be in my particular orbit. There are a lot of people in the business that, you know, you know them, but you didn't know them.
Right.
One thing, I had an interesting thing, talking about Frizz Freeling, one of my favorite stories. Excuse me. One, you know, they have the Academy Awards. So one year, there was two shorts. One was from Warner Brothers and the other was from MGM. And MGM was Tom is playing a concert piano, and Jerry's in the piano, bothered me, see. And the tune he's playing is the Hungarian Rhapsody. They love using Hungarian Rhapsody in cartoons. In that same year, over at Warner, they did a Bugs Bunny playing a concert piano with a mouse in the piano bothering him, and the music was sung Hungarian Rhapsody. Now you would think that there was some hanky-panky going on, but it wasn't. It just one of those freak things. Now what happened, and Frizz Freeling was the one who directed that thing, by the way. But what happened is when the Academy Awards came up, Warner's entry was the Bugs Bunny, and MGM's entry was the Tom and Jerry, and the Tom and Jerry won. And both of them were equally well animated and equally funny, and there was a lot of bitterness between the two studios, you know. And in fact, in the Screen Cartoons Guild, it was felt that really they should have split the Academy Award that year between the two of them. But Frizz Freeling was more philosophic about it, and he reasoned, I think it was true. It was just a luck of the toss. It so happened when they ran the cartoon reel, the Tom and Jerry had to be on there first, and then the Bugs Bunny later, and it's quite altogether possible that if Bugs Bunny had been on the reel first, it would have won, and the Tom and Jerry would have been passed over. But Frizz was, his staff was mad as hell, but Frizz was quite understanding about the whole thing. And he was a real pro. I have a lot of admiration for Frizz. You seem to hear more about Chuck than you do Frizz, but Frizz Freeling is one of the best directors in business.
Tex tells stories about when he was working at Famous, he could hear the guy that does the Popeye's voice. He could hear Popeye in the next room, you know, rehearsing another animated
Did
film.
he do that at normal speed? Did they speed his voice up at all?
No, they didn't.
It was all natural?
Well, the thing is, what happened was, see, Mike Myers and Jack Mercer were a story team. And I was working with Laura, I worked both in the animation department and the story department, and I was working with a guy named Lawrence Bourne, and we were next door to Mike and Jack, and when they were working on a Popeye story, you could hear Popeye talking all day, which was kind of a novelty. But it's, no, they didn't do anything, that was all Jack.
What did he sound like when he talked normal? Completely different, or you really had to work to get that?
I think it would be a handicap to speak
I
like
guess
Popeye for the year.
I guess you'd say that he sounded completely different.
Yeah.
He would pitch his voice higher for the Popeye.